Hello there, and welcome to the How to Market Your Horse Business podcast. I'm so glad you're joining me here today. If we are new friends, then you've likely guessed by now, at least, that my name is Denise Alvarez, and I'm going to give you a very quick introduction, and then we will dive into today's episode and introduce you to the podcast guests that we have with us. Now, as I said, my name is Denise, and through my business, Storm Lily Marketing, I get to help dream-chasing horse business owners to ditch the overwhelm and get the clarity they've been craving so they can grow their business in a way that meets their definition of success. Now, I do this primarily through business coaching and then education, such as this podcast, and I have some online learning resources for you as well. All that I do, friends, is so that you as an equestrian entrepreneur can be out in the barn or the arena or behind the camera lens or on the computer, wherever it is you've served the industry. I want to help you do more of that. So here on the podcast, you will get a mix of step-by-step strategies, essential how-tos, and entrepreneurial mindset shifts that will help you not only see what's possible for your business, but I'm also here to guide you through that process so you can make it happen. And today we are doing that by talking about all things brand story. Now, don't turn it off, okay? I know that sounds like jargon at first, okay? But we're going to get practical. You know, we always do that here on the podcast. So we're going to talk about how you can bring your brand story, which everyone has one, okay? Everyone has a story around their brand. We're going to talk about how you identify it and how you can bring that to life in your marketing, whether we're talking about in person or online. Okay. Now, I've invited Amy McGann onto the podcast to talk about this, and you may recognize her name if you've been here for a bit, because Amy was my guest on episode 174 as well, where I introduced you to her as well as Danette Nutaboom, the co-founders of Horse Grooms. So if you've not listened to that episode, I encourage you to do that. But today we're actually talking about the other part of what Amy does, which is brand strategy and copywriting and storytelling. You will hear her tell her story. And as you do, friends, you're going to hear why she calls herself a storyteller. She's really good and she shares the heart behind it so well. But the reason I invited her here today to talk about these things is because I know that many of you are settling. You're settling for branding and copy and social posts that are generic. I love horses. I care about my clients. I treat people and horses like family. I treat my clients like family. Those things may be true, but they're not what make you stand out in your business. And they're not enough to build the trust and the connection that's going to lead to conversions, whether it's online or in person. And so I asked Amy to come here and share with us a bit about how you, as an equestrian entrepreneur, can move beyond the basics and uncover a brand story that's rooted in real substance, your values, your unique point of view, and the transformation that you offer to your customers. So this is definitely one where you're going to have Notepad handy, but on top of that, you're going to need to bring your heart, okay? Because we're going to dive into the heart of why you do what you do and how you can communicate that in a way that speaks directly to your right people. And like I said, we're getting practical, so be ready for some action steps, okay? All right, here we go. Here's my interview with Amy McGann. Perfect. Thank you, Amy, for joining me here today, again, for the second time in the matter of just a few months. I am so grateful. So thank you.
Yeah, I am hyped to be here. Our first conversation was super fun, so it's good to be back.
Yes, I'm so excited. So this time we get to dive into more of the specifics of what you are doing in your business. So before it was Horse Grooms. And so, of course, I'm going to make sure everybody goes to listen to that to get your initial introduction and learn more about that piece of your life. But one of the other things that you do and how you got introduced to Horse Grooms, from what I understand, is this piece of the branding and storytelling that you're so passionate about. And so I would love to know, before we jump into some of that, when it comes to your story, are there maybe some other elements or things that you would like to highlight for my listeners to help them better understand a bit about your background? Or frankly, you're welcome to give another small synopsis, because some people may be listening and haven't met you via Horse Groom. So share a bit about that journey, What's happened to get you to this place where you are a brand storyteller who also is a horse person who spends a ton of time on horseback in the Montana backcountry, which I'm not jealous of at all.
Yeah, totally. Well, I've always felt most alive around horses. I grew up on the East Coast, and I was super lucky to go to a New Hampshire horse camp where they had 70 horses. And so back then, my version of church was being out in the pasture with them and like feeling that pulse of the herd running by when they ran between pastures. And I had no idea back then how much my purpose would find its stride with them. I was just a horse obsessed young girl. And since then, I've chased a ton of things that have made me feel that same kind of aliveness. I worked in corporate marketing first for a while, but it never expanded me the way I needed it to. So I left and I became a firefighter, a ranch hand, a ski patroller, a backcountry horse guide. And 5 years ago, when I moved out west, everything really clicked into place when I met my heart horse, Biscuit, on a ranch in Wyoming. And Biscuit wasn't some cute little trail pony. He was scrappy, scarred up, and stubborn as they come. And on my very first ride out in the Wyoming backcountry, he chose me and I chose him right back. So that season, Biscuit and I went everywhere together. We went through red rock canyons and open desert valleys, through hailstorms and into stillness under a night sky of stars, to wildflower fields at sunrise. And every step of the way, he brought me home to myself, back to my most unbridled form. And that's really the heartbeat of my work now. I help business owners return to that same kind of truth, the part of us that can't just be designed or created from nowhere, the part of us that doesn't follow trends, that already exists inside everyone and just needs space to take form. So that's where Unbridled Form was born, in that overlap of story, identity, and deep remembering.
Okay. First of all, that was a beautiful telling. And like, I mean, talk about a commercial for what it is that you do, the storytelling part of it. Like, I love that. That is so special. And I think, again, for everyone that's listening, I am sure they're going to hear a piece of their story in that because for every horse business owner that I work with, it started with horses in some way, right? That's why I love serving horse business owners because their business, it has its start with horses. And so I love that. But of course, we have to have some strategy along that, right? We have to have the marketing piece and the things that you do and the things that I do to help them with that. And so, that being said, for a lot of horse business owners, that's the piece that is the stumbling block is how do I set myself apart? How do I have that commercial like Amy just did that shows my uniqueness? And I know and just to clarify, that was not a commercial like in terms of you trying to sell yourself. I know that. I know that that was just the heart of what you do coming through in your story. And I love that. That's what sets you apart. And so for those listening, for equestrian entrepreneurs, oftentimes they have a hard time finding what is it that sets me apart? How do I set myself out from the crowd aside from price? So often that is what they think is their differentiator. I just need to be cheaper or, if I'm the most expensive or the cheapest and thinking that that's the only selling point, but there's so much more than that. And so you encourage entrepreneurs really to embrace their brand story and even to create a brand experience, which I love. So tell me a little bit more about what that means.
Yeah, well, the truth is, especially in the world we're living in now, people are choosing where they engage, where they spend their time, where they buy based on trust, feeling, and identity. And so a lot of times out there, there's a message that your brand isn't just a logo or a website. But what that really means is your brand is how someone feels the moment they land on your homepage or walk in your barn or open a package you just sent. It's the way you answer the phone. It's the story behind your product. It's your tone, your photos, your approach. These things are all working together to build connection. And so when a business tells a really true, grounded story, not just we care about quality, but why you started, who you serve, what your values are and how they influence the way you move through the world. It allows you to stand out just by being true to yourself. And that resonance makes people trust you, come back to you, recommend you to everyone they know. So, whatever the horse business is, whether you're fitting saddles, selling horsehair jewelry, offering lessons, if you can tell a clear, emotionally grounded story and let it guide your visuals, your customer experience, the words, you'll stand out because you'll be you and not a lookalike of everyone else, because we're just naturally hardwired to recognize what's different.
Oh, that's interesting. Where you think we're hardwired to recognize what's different. That's a way I had not thought about it before. Tell me more about that process.
Well, it's instinctual and it's wired into us from a point of survival, right? Because when we notice what's different, that's a point that we check into, like our caveman brain, right? Say you're moving through the woods and suddenly something's different. You see a shadow in the woods. That's where your attention goes. So that part of us hasn't left yet. And it's what keeps us like honed in when we see something different now where we're safe and we're just looking at what are we going to grab off the shelf? What are we going to actually book now that we've landed on this website? When we notice what's different, it causes us to pause and take a closer look and stay a while, just enough to hear the story, learn more, and then make that decision.
Okay, I love that. I love tapping into some of the psychology behind it, because I think that's so key. And again, when it comes to marketing, when it comes to strategy, I know that can feel very overwhelming for equestrian entrepreneurs. And so helping to break that pieces down and say, look, this is here. What's natural is that people notice things that are different. And here's why. Like, thank you for breaking that down. I think that's so helpful. And for those listening, I want them to have that takeaway too. It's like, okay, this is why it's important to stand out. Not just because I think I should, not just because the books tell me I should, but it really is going to make a difference for how people view my company and how people interact and engage with us. So, that being said, the bread and butter of the How to Market Your Horse Business podcast is the practical application, the action steps that we give people to say, this is why it matters. This is why we care about this. And now, how do you do that in your business? So, knowing, and you gave some great examples because we do have product based business owners who listen and service based business owners, and some of them are a mix and doing both. So, given that, what are some practical ways that you would encourage equestrian entrepreneurs to really dive into creating this brand story and brand experience in a unique way for their business?
Yeah, first things first, just audit your first impression. Like, look at the way you're showing up in the world and ask yourself, if someone finds me for the first time online or in person, what do they see, feel, or assume? Because if also you're not telling a story, if you're not, saying this is who I am, what I do, who I do it for, super clearly, they're going to put their own spin on it, fill in the blanks, and make some assumptions. So
Mm.
thinking about, does my website, my signage, my voicemail reflect what I want them to feel? Does it feel welcoming, clear, trustworthy? And then building on that using real stories. So if you've help someone move through a challenge, if you like watched a student bond with their horse over months of lessons, if you yourself have overcome something or faced a pivot or, learned something going through life, which that's all of us, uh, share that. Use those stories in your social, in your emails, even in like a brochure or a handout. Storytelling builds connection wherever it's showing up, and it's way more memorable than, like you said, just features or price, because those folks who are differentiating, where they're going to buy book services based on inclusions or price are not the people that we're meant to fully serve. They're just folks who are attracted to, numbers or line items. I think we find most fulfillment in business and we've really reached the people we're meant to serve when we give them something to belong to. And then they stay around for a long time. We build those relationships. We feel better about what we're putting into the world. So then with that too, you can design for feeling, not just function. So every part that people interact with your brand, your marketing, even the music you play in a store or a barn, that creates a mood. So you can think about how you want people to feel, whether it's relaxed or safe, inspired, elevated, and then ask how your space, visuals, and language can reflect that. Like for every brand I build these days, I make a brand playlist because I really want to move beyond just the visuals or, listening to what the words are. Like, how does the brand feel? What smells, what music, what tactile feelings are influencing this world? So you look at all that in the real world expression of your brand and make sure that is all consistent. Because if things aren't working together, that's confusing. And if they are, people feel held and they trust that what they see is what they get.
That's so good. Okay, brand playlist. I love that idea. I want to
Oh,
encourage everybody to think about that.
yeah.
And even the idea of playing music in your barn, like something practical like that to create a mood and experience. I love. So I want to go back to where you said audit the website. Do you encourage people to audit themselves and or to invite other people into that process? So for example, when I do a website, I'll tell people like, hey, now before we like launch it to the world, send this to a few family and friends, have them give initial feedback. Is it clear they understand where to go, what to do, right? Just from a user navigation experience is what we're focused on. So when you talk about auditing from a brand experience perspective, are you telling the business owner to just do that solo or do you also advise them like, hey, get some feedback from other people to see what their experience is on your site?
Yeah, I'm more thinking of it from, like, the "what do I do next? Where do I invest next?" standpoint,
Mm,
right? Where someone has something that's worked well for them for the past, couple years, 10 years or whatever, and they've
mhm,
outgrown it, and they're wondering, "What's missing?" Where do I invest the money I've set aside for marketing or the $0 I've set across for marketing, and I have to find somewhere. It's deciding is now really the time. So that's when I encourage folks to look and see, are they telling a consistent story and whatnot? And are things legally compliant on their site? Are they set up to take the burden off their customer or client and make things as easy as possible? And if they're not, that's when they either need to really like get educated and know what they're doing and build their own website again, or pull in a professional like you or I to support them and guide them through. And again, make sure everything's compliant, super strategic. Then when when I hand off a website or a brand, I actually never suggest people send it to for feedback because we've done so much strategizing, inspiration sourcing, like just deep excavation of who that person is, what their business is, how
mhm,
it's supposed to move through the world. And we've done that through like a really intimate process between the client and I,
mhm,
and then just really doing that auditing ourselves and making sure what we're doing isn't just based on personal preferences. It's rooted in psychology,
mhm.
universal instincts and emotion that all of us feel, just maybe more or less at different times of life. So I actually encourage people to discover their work in the world when we launch a brand or website. Let it be, take feedback, but also take it with a grain of salt. Just note it, see how it feels for months, see what their customers are just naturally saying and see how the people they're serving are experiencing the brand or website, not necessarily their friends or family.
Mhm.
So, I definitely see the value in saying, like, is this clear and whatnot? But I think there's some other checks we can do to do that because it can be overwhelming when we're crafting this new presence. It's also so often full of just as much excitement as it is growing pains and insecurity and being unsure. So I don't love to welcome in friends and family feedback unless it's
I
something
love that you're saying
strategic.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I love that you're saying that and clarifying that. So, and that's good that I can clarify that too, because yes, I agree. I we're on the same page in terms of like you've done the work with your audience, you know who you're trying to reach, and your friends and family may not be the ones who are going to pay for what you're offering. 100%. So when I say that, yeah, it's just like user navigation. Is it easy to find where you need to go? Are the buttons and links working? Make sure we've checked all the, those things. But I love what you're saying because I think that's also important. And I'd love for you to expand on that when you talk about brand story. It is your story and you're crafting it for a specific audience. It's not meant and I talk a lot about that on the podcast, right? That idea of niching down and what you're creating is not meant to be for everybody. And so if you're trying to reach everybody and everybody's saying, giving you all this feedback and you're trying to incorporate everyone's feedback, it's going to water down your messaging and keep you from effectively getting those right people in the door. So 1000% I love what you're saying. If you want to expand on that some more, go for it because it is key.
Well, like, the bridge there is you could identify a couple of your peers, a couple of your favorite clients, send it to them and say, "Does this feel representative of the way we've worked together? Does this feel like where I'm heading? That, like, the private conversations we've had of what I'm dreaming up for my business. Does this feel aligned?" Like, that's a good way to do it. It's just a core group of people who are, like you said, like, strategically aligned with the audience you're pivoting to or, where you're going versus just free flow out into the world, sending it to your college friends and, whoever will
Right?
look at it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, for sure. Okay, so we talked about brand experience some, and I want you to share about that, the practical ways people can do that, because I think number one, I think it's one of your sweet spots that you've talked about, and that I thought not a lot of people are talking about. Where you even talked about when we chatted, that like exhibits when you're at an expo and you have a booth space. How is that representative of your brand? If you have, like, I have a friend that has a tack shop, and they are not a friend and client that has a tack shop that they moves around with them when they go to places. They'll take it, and she makes it really beautiful and representative of what it's like to work with them and what that experience is like. And so we're talking digital websites and social media, but then also it's those in-person experiences that you want to be, like you said, a cohesive package. But it's not easy for everybody. It doesn't come natural to everybody. So for those people who are like, okay, I love this idea, but how in the world do I accomplish that? Give me some simple ways that I can do that. What would you say to them?
Yeah. Just think about senses. You can think about visuals first and make sure you're using all your brand colors. And if you don't have brand colors, it'd be the time to really root into that and say, again, like, what feeling do I want to achieve with the colors? Like, am I trying to have a lot of high energy and a lot of bright colors? Am I trying to have it be more calmer and more like softer pastels or neutral white, black, and some tones in there? Think about that. And then make sure your primary brand color, the one you're most recognized for, the one you use the most, is showing up the most in that display. And then any print things you're doing, like signage, handouts, business cards, stickers, patches, those things are all using your brand fonts, your logos, your colors. Like, that's the basics. Just making sure that your primary things are showing up, first things first. And then from there, you consider what materials are you going to use. So for there's a private car service here in Montana that I work with, and they have a very rugged but very high-end, polished feeling brand. So the things we chose when we designed their event booth together were like very crisp, clean tablecloths that felt great, looked great, like didn't have a lot of wrinkles naturally, like they're wrinkle resistant. So they were always looking good no matter what. And then we did a custom wood backdrop. And then we had an antler on the table, like pulling in some of those vibes, but keeping things very polished, elegant still. Like, it almost looks like a very nice wedding backdrop for the booth. So it also kind of keeps people in. It makes a world and not just a table you can pass by. And then you think about, do you have the opportunity to play music where you're going? Again, like I said, having that there. Do you have the opportunity to pass out any snacks and making sure those flavors are aligned with the brand? Like, there's a copywriting studio I partner with. They're called Salted Pages, and they mail out salted caramels to their new clients and partners. Right. So thinking about what are all these little touches where you can bring your brand into real life.
I love that. I love that. Thank you. That's super. I love those practical things and senses. Like, again, things that we don't all naturally think of. We just think about the visuals. So I love that idea and that concept. Okay. I think you may have had a few more things in there that I jumped in with some questions. So if you had other things, Amy, are there other things that they should keep in mind as they're building a unique experience for their equine business?
So the other practical tip to telling your story, getting more comfortable with these kind of things is just talking to yourself. Like, I talk to myself in the car like every other day when I'm driving all around town. I'll, say my brand story. I'll talk about what I do. I'll talk about a certain offering. I'll talk about a certain client I worked with. And it feels silly at first, but if you can feel crazy talking to yourself alone, you can certainly respond to a question that someone's asked, and it'll feel much more natural. Because the first time you're explaining what you do or thinking about what you do or any of these things should not be when someone's asking you and you're faced with that, anxiety and overthinking about how do I condense all that I do into this one statement. And if all that sounds like a tall order to do on your own, I have a free brand storytelling guide available on unbridledform.com. And it's rooted in psychology, like what we were talking about before, about why do they actually work? So it's rooted in the emotional, instinctual stories that live inside all of us. and are just more alive during different seasons of our lives. So that guide walks you through the 12 foundational stories that can help you unearth the story that's already alive in what you do, alongside some examples of well-known brands, the strengths, opportunities, and blind spots of each. And it's free and it's been my most loved resource, so folks can check it out, think about their story, and then talk to themselves. The most important thing is just recognizing what's already alive in what you do and aligning everything around that. Like, you don't have to come up with some story, come up with some experience, do what other people are doing. It's truly just about witnessing the art of the way you already show up for your people. Like, looking at your reviews, what are people talking about? What are people most drawn to? And then doing more of that. So I think it really is as simple as that. It's just, like you said, it's hard to be objective or look at these things when you're so close to it or when it's not your world all the time, but it's truly as simple as recognizing what's already alive in what you do and doing more of that.
Okay, I love that. And so again, for those listening, she just gave you another practical tip with reviews and testimonials. And I have found that to be true as well. When I write websites, the best copy that I can get is when people give me lots of good testimonials to work from, because then I can use the words that people are already saying that they love about that person and just capture the heart and the essence of their voice and what it is that they do. So for those listening, you guys can do that as well. You can pay attention to what people are doing and you can ask, hey, I'm working on XYZ project or I'm working with somebody. I'd love to know what it is that keeps you coming back, or why did you choose to work with us in the first place? Find out those things that are setting you apart and that align with you and your heart, and then shine a light on those. So yeah, that's so good.
And these are all resources that I've either developed or am developing. Like, I have a guide to getting great testimonials for service and product-based businesses because sometimes it's
Mhm.
not easy as just saying, tell me about your experience. Like, we have to guide people, like, what are the questions that are really gonna get these emotional testimonials that give, new people something to belong to and see themselves in? Or like event design, I'm crafting a resource for that because these are all questions people are asking, and I want people to have all these one-off guides to, make
Mhm.
it easy for them and more practical and easy to follow.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Well, I'll make sure those are linked to in the show notes. So, of course, we'll be linking to that. So, that leads me to the next question, which was where people can find you. So, clearly, I will link to everything in the show notes for this episode. But oftentimes, people are listening and quickly going to Instagram, quickly going to the website. So, tell them where they can connect with you, Amy.
Yeah, you can find my work over at unbridledform.com, and I'm on Instagram at unbridledform. There's also a podcast on Spotify and YouTube called The Stories That Form Us. It's about the narrative shaping our creative work and the way we move through the world and business and in life. And if you're not quite sure where to start, I have a lot of resources, like we just said, about helping you begin to clarify your brand and tell your story. Because again, it's already there. It's just waiting to be uncovered.
Yeah, I love that. Again, spoken exactly like a storyteller. It's just in your blood, Amy. I love it. Okay, thank you so much for joining us here. I know this is going to be really helpful to those listening as they try to figure out. Many are DIYers and many are saying like I need to learn this and then I'm going to trust somebody with it. So we may be working with one of you guys in the future, but either way, those listening, take what Amy has shown you and see how you can shine a light on what's already there, whether it's in your digital marketing, your in-person marketing, or just the experience you're creating right now with your brand. So I love it. Thank you so much, Amy. I appreciate all you're doing.
Thank you.
All right. I hope you guys so enjoyed getting to see more of Amy. I almost said another side of Amy, but it's the same side, but just a little bit deeper, I think. And I love it. And I so appreciate what she is doing and what she's created. And so I will, like I said, have links to her website and all the things in the show notes. As we were having our conversation, and then since I've interviewed her, I know she's been under a bit of a rebrand on what she is doing. She's still doing storytelling, but it looks a little bit different in terms of who she's working with. So if you go to her website now, you'll see that reflected. But her resources are still the same heart behind that, which is that idea of storytelling. And so I'll make sure, like I said, to link to that in the show notes, which for today is episode 183. So if you go to stormlily.com/183, then you will get to all the links there in the show notes there on my website. The last thing I want to make sure that you know is that there on the website, you can also find information for my one-on-one coaching program. as of the time of this publication of this particular episode, applications are open again for Take the Reins, my one-on-one coaching program. It is a 6-month coaching program. You will hear me talk about it more in the coming weeks as we are gearing up for fall and new people to enter into this coaching container. So definitely, if you've been thinking, Denise, I hear what you're saying. I do want to get past this generic messaging. I do want to craft a story around what the heart of my business is and implement that on my social media and figure out how email marketing works and auto my website and really have essentially a comprehensive plan for your marketing that is simple and not overwhelming, but still effective. That's what we do inside Take the Reins. My goal is to simplify it for you, figure out what matters most to you, what your version of success is, and then help you to get there. So again, you can find out more about that at stormlily, LILY.com/reins, or just head to stormlily.com and you'll find the information there pretty easily as well. But either way, friends, I'm always so glad you're joining me here. And if this podcast has been helpful to you, take a screenshot, share it with a friend, send the link. The more people that know, the better the industry will be, because the more we can grow and equip the equine businesses that are the heart of what we do in the horse world. So I'm so honored to be with you on this journey, and I hope you'll stay tuned over the next few weeks. I have some brand new episodes coming right at you. Have an awesome day.